Imagine a bank account holding over $100 billion. It is one of the largest single fortunes in human history. It rivals the net worth of titans like Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, and depending on the day's market fluctuations, it occasionally surpasses them. But there is a catch, a massive, terrifying catch. The owner of this fortune hasn't logged in since the spring of 2011. They haven't spent a single cent. They haven't moved a fraction of a penny to prove they are still alive. To the world, this individual is known as Satoshi Nakamoto, the pseudonymous creator of Bitcoin. But the chilling truth is that nobody knows who Satoshi Nakamoto actually is. They could be your neighbor. They could be a covert collective of government cryptographers. They could be a criminal mastermind serving a life sentence in a maximum security prison. Or perhaps they are dead, taking the cryptographic keys to a $100 billion empire to the grave. This is not just a story about computer code or digital money. This is a story about the architect of a digital ghost ship, a genius who built a machine that would forever alter the global financial system, set it into perpetual motion, and then deliberately, meticulously erased their own existence. If Satoshi Nakamoto's true identity is ever revealed, or if those billions of dollars ever move, it could trigger a catastrophic shockwave across global markets, shattering the foundational trust of a trillion-dollar ecosystem. To understand the greatest mystery of the 21st century, we have to go back to the beginning. We have to go back to a moment when the world's financial system was burning to the ground. It was October 31st, 2008. Halloween. The global economy was in freefall. Lehman Brothers had collapsed, plunging markets into a state of panic not seen since the Great Depression. Trust in traditional banks and government institutions was entirely broken. Amidst this chaos, an unassuming 9-page document appeared on a niche internet cryptography mailing list. The paper was titled Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. The author, Satoshi Nakamoto. The white paper proposed something that experts had tried and failed to create for decades: a purely decentralized digital currency. It solved a notorious computer science dilemma known as the double spending problem. It meant that, for the first time in human history, two people could exchange digital value over the internet without needing a bank, a corporation, or a government to act as a trusted middleman. But Satoshi didn't just write a theory. A few months later, on January 3, 2009, Nakamoto turned theory into reality by mining the very first block of the Bitcoin network known as the Genesis block. And within the code of this Genesis block, Satoshi hid a permanent, unerasable message. It was a headline from that day's edition of the London Times. The Times, 3rd of January 2009, Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks. This was not merely a timestamp, it was a battle cry. It was a manifesto etched into the digital bedrock of Bitcoin. Satoshi was pointing directly at the failures of the traditional financial system, a system where banks gamble recklessly with public funds and then get bailed out by taxpayers. Satoshi was offering a lifeline, a mathematical fortress where money could not be inflated away by greedy governments or frozen by corrupt institutions. For the next 2 years, Satoshi Nakamoto acted as the benevolent leader of the burgeoning Bitcoin community. He collaborated with other developers, answered technical questions on forums, and relentlessly patched vulnerabilities in the code. The digital footprint he left behind during this time is extensive. He published over 500 forum posts and exchanged hundreds of emails. And it is within these communications that the first clues to his identity emerge. Who was the person behind the keyboard? On his online profile, Satoshi claimed to be a 37-year-old man living in Japan, born on April 5, 1975. But digital sleuths quickly realized this was a carefully constructed facade. First, the birth date, April 5, 1975, is highly symbolic. On April 5, 1933, U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed Executive Order 6102, making it illegal for citizens to privately own gold. That ban was finally repealed in the year 1975. By choosing this specific date, Satoshi was aligning himself with the history of monetary rebellion. Furthermore, Satoshi's grasp of the English language was far too native, far too idiomatic, to belong to an ordinary Japanese citizen who had never lived in the West. But it wasn't just flawless English, it was distinctly British English. He used words like color, favor, maths, and flat instead of apartment. He used colloquialisms like bloody hard. He even demonstrated a specific formatting quirk, placing 2 spaces after every period, a habit deeply ingrained in individuals who learned to type on manual typewriters in the 1970s and 1980s. Even more fascinating is his specific word choice. The largest stylometric analysis ever conducted on Satoshi's writings revealed a bizarrely strict grammatical rule. Satoshi exclusively used the single word cannot. In all of his published 68,000 words, he never once wrote it as 2 words, cannot. Then there were his sleeping habits. A Swiss software engineer tracked the timestamps of every single post Satoshi ever made. The resulting graph revealed a massive dead zone, a steep decline in activity between 5 a.m. and 11 a.m., Greenwich Mean Time. Even on weekends, the pattern held. If Satoshi was living in Japan, he would have been sleeping through the middle of the afternoon every single day. The data pointed to a completely different reality. Satoshi Nakamoto was likely living in the United Kingdom or on the eastern or Pacific coasts of North America. He was brilliant, he was refined, and he was fiercely, obsessively protective of his privacy. By late 2010, Bitcoin was beginning to gain traction outside of obscure cryptography circles. And with attention came danger. In December 2010, the whistleblowing organization WikiLeaks faced a massive financial blockade from major credit card companies and payment processors. In response, WikiLeaks announced they would start accepting donations in Bitcoin. While some saw this as a victory for the cryptocurrency, Satoshi was terrified. Bitcoin was still in its infancy, still a fragile experiment. He knew that drawing the ire of the United States government and global intelligence agencies could crush the network before it ever truly took off. On the Bitcoin Talk forum, Satoshi posted a stark warning. The project needs to grow gradually so the software can be strengthened along the way. I make this appeal to WikiLeaks not to try to use Bitcoin. Days later, he wrote a message that read less like an engineering update and more like a prophecy of doom. WikiLeaks has kicked the hornet's nest, and the swarm is headed towards us. The very next day, December 12, 2010, Satoshi Nakamoto logged into the forum, posted a brief technical update regarding denial of service limits, and logged out. He never posted on the forum again. A few months later, on April 23, 2011, he sent a final private email to fellow developer Mike Hearn. It was brief. It was devoid of emotion. It simply read, "I've moved on to other things. It's in good hands with Gavin, and everyone. A few days later, he instructed another developer to stop referring to him as a mysterious shadowy figure, fearing it would invite unwanted media narratives. And then, the creator of the world's first decentralized currency stepped into the void. Satoshi Nakamoto was gone. But he left something behind, something massive. In the earliest days of Bitcoin, when the network was practically empty and anyone could mine coins on a basic home computer, Satoshi was the dominant miner keeping the system alive. For a long time, no one knew exactly how many coins he had amassed. But in 2013, a blockchain researcher named Sergio Demian Lerner uncovered a hidden cryptographic fingerprint in the earliest blocks of the Bitcoin ledger. By analyzing the technical anomalies in how these blocks were processed, Lerner identified a pattern, the Satoshi pattern. The data revealed that a single entity utilizing a custom-coded, multi-threaded computer setup had systematically mined roughly 22,000 blocks. This single miner, widely accepted to be Satoshi himself, had accumulated approximately 1.1 million Bitcoin. At Bitcoin's all-time high, this stash was valued at nearly $139 billion. Yet, if you look at the blockchain today, you will see a breathtaking reality. Spread across over 20,000 separate digital wallets, those 1.1 million Bitcoins have never moved. Aside from a few test transactions sent to early collaborators in 2009, not a single Satoshi coin has been spent, transferred, or cashed out in over 15 years. Why? Why would someone sit on enough wealth to rival nations and never touch it? Did he lose the private keys to the wallets? In the early days of Bitcoin, there were no standard backup phrases. If a hard drive crashed or a password was forgotten, those digital coins were lost forever. Was Satoshi an idealistic martyr who intentionally burned his own wealth to ensure Bitcoin remained truly decentralized and immune from founder influence? Or is there a darker reason? If Satoshi were to move even a fraction of those coins, it would instantly trigger global chain analysis. Law enforcement agencies, intelligence bureaus, and blockchain forensics experts would track the money, tearing down his veil of anonymity. This $100 billion ghost fortune hangs over the crypto market like the sword of Damocles. Financial analysts and investors live in quiet terror of the Satoshi wallets. If those 1.1 million coins were ever suddenly dumped onto the market, the resulting liquidity shock and panic could cause a catastrophic crash, wiping out trillions in value overnight. But as the years turn into decades, the silence of the wallets only deepens the mythology. If Satoshi is out there, who could he be? Over the past 15 years, the Internet has turned into a global detective agency, desperately trying to unmask the ghost. Let's examine the suspects. The most infamous claimant is Craig Stephen Wright, an Australian computer scientist. For years, Wright aggressively declared to the world that he was the sole creator of Bitcoin. He filed massive lawsuits against developers, exchanges, and podcasters who dared to call him a fraud. He claimed he had the original documents, the cryptographic keys, the whole backstory. But the crypto community demanded one simple thing: sign a message with Satoshi's original private key. He never did. In 2024, the charade came crashing down. In a high-stakes trial before the UK High Court, Judge James Mellor delivered a devastating verdict. The court found that Craig Wright had lied to the court extensively and repeatedly, and had engaged in forgery on a grand scale to manufacture his fake identity. Craig Wright is definitively not Satoshi Nakamoto. Then there is Dorian Nakamoto. In 2014, Newsweek magazine published a bombshell cover story claiming they had found the elusive creator living a quiet life in Temple City, California. His birth name was Dorian Prentice Satoshi Nakamoto. He was a 64-year-old Japanese-American physicist who had worked on classified military defense projects. The media descended on his suburban home like a swarm of locusts, chasing him down the street in cars. But Dorian was bewildered. During a brief interview when asked about Bitcoin, he had said, "I am no longer involved in that, and I cannot discuss it." The press took this as a confession, but Dorian later clarified he thought they were asking about his classified engineering work for military contractors. He hadn't even heard the word Bitcoin until his son mentioned it weeks prior. The final nail in the coffin for the Dorian theory came just hours after the article dropped. On the P2P Foundation forum, an account belonging to the real Satoshi Nakamoto, dormant for 5 years, suddenly came online. It posted a 5-word message: "I am not Dorian Nakamoto." If not Dorian, then who? The spotlight often turns to a brilliant, beloved figure in the cypherpunk community: Hal Finney. Finney was a legendary cryptographer who had spent his career building privacy tools. Long before Bitcoin, Finney invented reusable proof of work, a digital cash prototype that heavily influenced Satoshi. When Satoshi released the Bitcoin software, Finney was the very first person to download it, run a node, and help fix the bugs. On January 12, 2009, Satoshi sent 10 Bitcoin to Hal Finney. It was the first Bitcoin transaction in human history. Finney's writing style was remarkably similar to Satoshi's, and in an unbelievable twist of fate, Hal Finney lived just a few blocks away from Dorian Satoshi Nakamoto. Did the real creator borrow his neighbor's name as an elaborate alias? It is an incredibly compelling theory. However, forensic analysis casts deep doubt. Blockchain researchers proved that Satoshi and Finney were actively running separate mining nodes from different IP addresses simultaneously. Even more damning, on April 18, 2009, Hal Finney was photographed running a grueling 10-mile foot race in California. During the exact hours he was running, Satoshi Nakamoto was online, sending emails and processing transactions. Tragically, Hal Finney was diagnosed with ALS and passed away in 2014. Up until his final days, when he could only communicate by twitching his eyes, Finney steadfastly denied being Satoshi. Another heavyweight candidate is Nick Szabo. A legal scholar and computer scientist, Szabo is famous for inventing the concept of smart contracts in the 1990s. But more importantly, in 1998, Szabo designed a theoretical decentralized currency called BitGold. The architecture of BitGold is so staggeringly similar to Bitcoin, utilizing proof of work, cryptographic signatures, and a distributed ledger, that many consider Szabo the true intellectual father of crypto. Aston University conducted a forensic linguistic analysis in 2014 comparing 13 candidates, concluding that Szabo's writing was an uncanny match for the Bitcoin white paper. Furthermore, just 6 months before the Bitcoin white paper was published, Szabo posted on his blog asking if anyone wanted to help him code one up. Yet, Szabo's candidacy has flaws. For one, he is an American who writes in American English, unlike Satoshi's distinct British flavor. and critically internal emails from 2008 reveal that Satoshi was apparently completely unaware of Sabo's BitGold until another developer pointed it out to him. Sabo himself has repeatedly denied the claims, stating, "I'm afraid you got it wrong doxing me as Satoshi, but I'm used to it." The theories only get darker from here. Enter Paul LaRue. LaRue was a brilliant programmer who created E4M, a highly sophisticated disk encryption software. But LaRue was not just a coder. He was a ruthless international cartel boss. He built a sprawling criminal empire involved in illegal pharmaceuticals, arms smuggling, gold running, and contract murder. He even used a fake passport under the name Solochi. LaRue needed a way to launder millions of dollars across borders without banks stopping him. Bitcoin would be the ultimate tool for a transnational syndicate. Satoshi Nakamoto went completely silent at the end of 2010. Paul LaRue was arrested by the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration in 2012. Are the 1.1 million Satoshi coins sitting untouched simply because the cartel boss who mined them is rotting in a maximum security prison cell? It is the most cinematic theory, but the crypto community largely dismisses it. Satoshi's patient, academic, and humble demeanor in forums completely contradicts the violent, erratic profile of a global crime lord. Could Satoshi have been Peter Todd? In 2024, an HBO documentary titled Money Electric: The Bitcoin Mystery shocked the internet by pointing the finger at the Canadian Bitcoin developer. The filmmaker's smoking gun was a 2010 forum post where Todd seemingly corrected and finished a sentence started by Satoshi, theorizing that Todd had accidentally logged in with his real name instead of his burner account. But the evidence was painfully thin. Todd was only 23 years old and finishing a fine arts degree when the Bitcoin white paper dropped. Todd publicly mocked the documentary, calling the theory conspiracy thinking level flimsy, and pointing out that a master of operational security like Satoshi wouldn't make such a juvenile forum mistake. Which brings us to the most explosive recent investigation. In April 2026, the New York Times published a massive 18-month investigation by Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist John Carreyrou. Carreyrou didn't point to a dead man, a criminal, or a college student. He pointed to Dr. Adam Back. Adam Back is a legendary British cryptographer and the CEO of Blockstream. In 1997, 11 years before Bitcoin, Back invented Hashcash, an anti-spam mechanism that relied on proof of work. Hashcash is explicitly cited in the Bitcoin white paper as the core mechanism that makes Bitcoin mining possible. The New York Times fed over 130,000 forum posts from the 1990s and 2000s into an AI-driven stylometric analysis engine. The results were staggering. Back's writing style matched Satoshi's closer than any other human being on the planet. Out of 325 unique hyphenation errors made by Satoshi, Adam Back shared exactly 67 of them, double the amount of the next closest suspect. Both men used the rare, obscure phrasing, partial pre-image. Both wrote, "burning the money." Both toggled inconsistently between British and American spellings, and both relentlessly placed two spaces after their sentences. The timeline is even more suspicious. Adam Back was one of the most vocal, prolific posters on the cypherpunk mailing lists for over a decade, obsessively discussing digital cash. But exactly when Satoshi Nakamoto appeared to build Bitcoin, Adam Back went completely, utterly silent. And just 6 weeks after Satoshi vanished forever in April 2011, Adam Back suddenly returned to the forums to aggressively champion Bitcoin. But there is a massive roadblock to this theory. In the summer of 2008, before the white paper was public, Satoshi Nakamoto sent an email directly to Adam Back. If Adam Back is Satoshi, it means he purposefully orchestrated a schizophrenic, multi-year deception, emailing his own alter ego to establish a fake paper trail, knowing that decades later, investigators would be hunting him. When confronted in his hotel room in El Salvador by the New York Times, Adam Back visibly tensed up. He vehemently, repeatedly denied the claims. "I am not Satoshi," he stated. He argued that the linguistic overlap was simply confirmation bias, a result of being immersed in the same tight-knit, highly technical cypherpunk subculture for 20 years. The crypto community largely rallied behind Back, furiously condemning the media for putting a massive target on the back of a living cryptographer without providing a shred of cryptographic proof. And that is the crux of the entire mystery: cryptographic proof. In a system built entirely on mathematics, theories and linguistic overlaps mean absolutely nothing. The only way to definitively prove you are Satoshi Nakamoto is to move a fraction of a coin from the Genesis block, or sign a message using Satoshi's original private key. Until that happens, everything is just noise. But look past the suspects. Look past the billions of dollars in dormant wallets. Look at the sheer, breathtaking genius of the vanishing act itself. Why did Satoshi Nakamoto leave? If Satoshi had stayed, he would have become a god, but he also would have become the ultimate single point of failure. History is littered with the corpses of digital currencies that came before Bitcoin, e-gold, Liberty Reserve. In every case, governments simply found the founders, arrested them, and shut the servers down. Satoshi knew that for Bitcoin to survive the wrath of central banks and nation-states, it could not have a CEO. It could not have a headquarters to raid. It could not have a leader to subpoena, blackmail, or assassinate. By stepping into the shadows and burning his own identity to the ground, Satoshi Nakamoto performed the ultimate sacrifice for his creation. He decentralized the narrative. Because there is no Satoshi to worship, the network is forced to rely purely on the strength of its code, the consensus of its miners, and the mathematics of cryptography. Satoshi's disappearance wasn't an accident. It wasn't a coward running from the law. It was the final masterstroke feature of the Bitcoin protocol. The creator of the most disruptive financial technology in human history gave the world a machine that could separate money from the state. He left behind a $100 billion fortune untouched, letting it sit as a silent digital monument to his own restraint. So who is Satoshi Nakamoto? Maybe he is Adam Back. Maybe he was Hal Finney. Maybe he was a cartel boss, or a government agency, or a collective of rogue geniuses. But as the blocks continue to tick by, every 10 minutes, year after year, it becomes increasingly clear that the identity of the creator no longer matters. The ghost is gone, but the machine is alive.